iOS operating system is slipping behind Android. According to data from Net Applications, iOS traffic fell last month to just under 45%. That was a little behind Android. They were neck and neck for the most part. Now Android has been the leader in terms of install base for quite some time, but this is the first time it has beaten Apple on actual usage numbers. We are seeing, John Ford, these numbers converge here. Hello. Good morning to you as well.
Good morning to you.
We're seeing these numbers converge, and Android had the market share for its install base for some time, as we just noted. They have a bigger user base overall, but this is about data.
Yep.
And what does it mean that we are finally seeing Apple slip?
You know what? It doesn't matter. It doesn't
That's
matter.
A statement.
It doesn't matter at all. Here's why. Because Android does not equal Google, first of all. You've got a number of different companies out there, OEMs, that are using Android devices that don't have Google apps installed. Amazon, for example, but there are others in China, for instance, that don't necessarily accrue to Google. Another reason it doesn't matter is what really counts is if iOS has enough people in its growing base and people who are buying things, either digital goods or physical goods, through the device. That's been their key lead, is they've got the people who are buying. So their install base is more valuable because of that. People surfing around on the internet on devices that may or may not be running Google apps, doesn't matter.
Let's say the iPhone 6 does launch this fall as we expect it to. Do you think that installs, usage, and purchases, do you think that we will see a spike after that phone launches?
Absolutely. We typically do. This is the cycle of the year where Apple has a big design change that often leads to even more buying than usual. It's probably going to be higher margin buying if this bigger phone is out there and maybe even carries a higher price tag. But then at the same time, what you also see when Apple comes out with a new design is lower margins overall, because they're the startup costs for the factories. It costs them more to tool these things and to pump out the new design. So there's a give and take, but they see a surge in market share, certainly.
But we always talk about ecosystem and how in this day and age, the ecosystem is so important. You get a user to buy a phone or to buy a device of some sort. You want them to stay as long as possible inside that ecosystem, to buy, to send emails, to use media, to use data. Does this give you any doubt about Apple's ecosystem that it's investing so much in?
It doesn't. And the reason why is it's not a zero-sum game. Just because Android's ecosystem is growing doesn't mean it's growing healthily, right? You've got fragmentation in Android. Not everybody is on the latest version of Android. So just because they're using it doesn't mean they're all using the same version. Also, just because Android is growing doesn't mean iOS isn't also growing. And iOS is growing in a very healthy way. When people get an iOS device, they tend to update it to the latest version of the operating system. That tends to make for a stronger ecosystem for Apple also. So, it's kind of an apples and oranges, to use the Turner phrase, comparison here.
Nice. I see what you did there.
Yeah.
I see what you did there. I want to just take a look at this graphic one more time, because I know you say it doesn't matter, but these are big moves. 10 percentage points for both iOS to the downside, Android to the upside. To see that in the course of a little more than 1 quarter, that's a big move.
And that's shared. That's not absolute numbers. And what you're seeing there is operating systems, not ecosystems. Android is not an ecosystem. There's a Google ecosystem inside Android. There's an Amazon ecosystem inside Android. There's a Xiaomi ecosystem inside Android. There's a Samsung ecosystem kind of playing in between all of these inside Android. Android itself alone is not an ecosystem.
Our tech yogi, bring us all in perspective, putting our concerns at ease. John Ford. We'll talk a little bit more tech in a few moments. We